And Samia is also along with me. We also work with the Affiliation of Women and Children Rights Advocates in Liberia, one of the leading institutions that helped to demand the Liberian president to declare rape as a national crisis. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and I look forward to all the things that we will talk today. Did I mix any question you wanted me to answer?
We're going to be taking in spaces. We just want everyone to introduce themselves so we can move right into the conversation.
Sweet.
Yes, so we've heard from Ms. Sharif and Wantoe and Fred. So we move into the full conversation, which majorly we're talking around gender equality with focus on men's roles, interests, and needs. We're looking at violence prevention, just in case you want to join us, fatherhood and caregiving, health, sexuality, the LGBTQ issues, spheres of men's engagement in gender equality, and a lot of the buzzword around period leave, paternity leave, and the menstrual equity health bill. But first, as much as these conversations are very relevant, technology plays a greater role. And Fred will turn the buster onto that path to tell us more on how we can leverage technology on men as allies to women. Thank you, Fred.
Hey, so thank you. One of the keys, we founded ManUp campaign as one of the first international efforts to engage youth and ending gender-based violence. So Twitter and Facebook were fairly young as platforms for activism, but our goal was to, with our kind of hip hop name, ManUp campaign, to allow men to really want to participate as well as young women. We're actually equal, young men and young women, at least in our initial cohort. We brought around 100 youth from 23 countries and 3 indigenous areas in North America to the World Cup in South Africa, because we were trying to find a way to really start to change the situation where women and children so often end up victims of violence within structures that we set up, wars, the way society works, and so many different specific issues that Chaste has been like mentioning. So our premise was to use music, sports, and technology, all things that both young men and young women wanted to engage in, as an element of an evidence-based project. So youth from the countries would work in mixed gender teams to design their own project. We had SVRI and a staff of very experienced people from Clinton Global to review the project plans, to give workshops and seminars to enhance those plans, and they rolled them out in their own communities and countries. And that was, very successful because, throughout gathering this cohort, we actually had applications from 135 countries. I was so disappointed that we were not able to include so many teams of young people around the world in these projects and seed them and take them there. And so, one of the keys to that was using, our network of social media and the network of bloggers, to getting to 135 people, very carefully targeted dialogues with different bloggers and different communities to get our word out. And ManUp is headquartered and started in New York City. One mistake we did make at the beginning was we didn't have a New York delegation. the US delegation was in San Francisco. So, you know, one route that we took to reform a strong center of youth leadership was start to engage in the CSWs. And so in 2012 and 2013, I went, what is this CSW? There's so many events, but there's no events for young people that I see, or technology or sports or some of the, you know, things to engage youth. So in 2015, we were able to kind of hold a side event the day before the CSW started. And we had some of our youth projects, which they presented after a march to Times Square that we led. And it was in like a club-like atmosphere. We had music, we had celebrities, we featured sports, we had film. And then the next year, we actually created the CSW Youth Forum, and we invited 300 youth. You may all know Valentine, one of my colleagues. That was his first engagement with the UN, and you know, knowing that young men could start to work on gender equality. I had Richard Castillo. So we started to develop a core so that we could do more, you know, engaging new leaders that didn't come to our first, you know, CSW. So we depended a lot, you know, like you all do now, on social media, you know, Skype, Messenger, all of these things, and these are critical. And I think the most critical part about designing technology and interacting technology is really try and find, you know, what somebody's compelling need is. What do they really want? And then what things will block them when you're designing technology? And here we really wanted, you know, to hear, respect, and understand youth ideas on how they could change, you know, gender-based violence in their own community. And that's the key. You know, maybe we can't offer this or that, but at least we can be a network where ideas can be listened to and heard, and people cannot feel alone in this challenge and really start to make progress. And I've seen youth grow so much. I mean, like Chaste, I mean, wow, he's just done so much, you know, in the last 4 years. It's just amazing, you know, the growth that you see when you engage young people. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fred. One of the things I see social media also doing is playing roles of bringing informations and messaging onto the spotlight. I could read on a message yesterday. I was trying to check on for the picture of a young of a father who was praising a young boy who stood up for a young girl in the bus who had just had a first period and had a stain on her pants, and he had to cover up the girl child with his own shirt, you know, and the father was praising the boy and praising the mother who had raised such a son. You know, when social media brings us on to such engagement, it tells us so much, and it tells us how much more we can be involved. So I'll be going back to Satta now. Um, what do you think about my color? You know, I'm putting on pink. Do you think men should wear pink? Satta, are you on?
Yes. Um, I don't think it should be a problem if men wear pink. That's why I have a problem with how, you know, we assign colors to certain gender and say, oh, men should wear a lot of blue because they are men, and women should wear pink because they are pink, and pink is feminine and stuff like that. We should encourage people to go beyond this whole gender a role that society for many years have attached to, you know, women and men, and tell you this is how you need to dress. If we are to fight such a gender-based violence, we have to break some of these stereotypes that tend to limit women and girls.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, I grew up making sure when they ask me that I need to have a particular type of cake, my cake has to be blue. I don't have to wear, and even while growing up, when I was putting on this pink, I know like, no, we men actually do wear pink. But Sherry, I would like to ask you, you've been able to work on holding the Liberian government accountable to protect human rights, advocate against sexual gender-based violence, access to safe space, and resources for survivors of sexual abuse. Are you really getting men involvement in such conversation? And how much more are you looking at breaking, even if I'll use the word, in restructuring the idea of making sure men are able to even join in this conversation and be fully involved in it? Your mic is muted.
Oh, like I said earlier, I think during the introduction, I mentioned something about the affiliation of women and child right advocates in Liberia. The leading group that organized a national 3 days protest that demand the Liberian president to declare rape as a national crisis. A lot of the members of the affiliation are men, surprisingly, right? And a lot of the people who show up for the protest were men who saw that violence and sexual abuse in Liberia was on the increase and they needed action. They wanted to stand with the affiliation of child and women rights advocates. They saw the need because during COVID, we had a huge increase. I mean, we still have COVID right now, but from the start of everything, we had a huge increase in the number of sexual and gender-based violence cases. And so what we had to do was to go beyond just activists organizing and, institutions that are working to stop SGBV, just creating awareness. We wanted it to be a national conversation for everyone to get involved. And we were involving men. There were a lot of he for she's ambassadors that show up to us, that were writing letters, that were signing our online petitions and sharing the flyers, encouraging people to come up, and stand up with the women and the girls of Liberia. Samuel Wantoe is a typical example. A lot of time when we have events and even the work that he do in Liberia with the women and children. And just growing on from that, I think we cannot go forward as a movement, especially a lot of us that do work around sexual gender-based violence, if we are not involving men and making them a key player in this fight against sexual gender-based violence. So I think it's very important, and we always try to involve men because this fight is everyone's business, and we gotta, get everyone involved.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned Samuel Wantoe. Samuel Wantoe has an amazing profile. And when we were talking about even getting discussing for this topic, we said, how much more can we get teenage boys, teenage girls to join in the conversation of gender equality? And surprisingly enough, since the age of 9, Wanto has championed the rights of women and children and has been one of Liberia's prime faces for global sustainability and youth development, with an array of awards from the Princess Diana to the Obama, and a couple of Wanto, where do we start from? How did you start that early? Please take us onto that journey so we can at least motivate parents who are on this call right now to engage their teenage daughter and son to take up roles in sustainability.
Thank you so much, Chase, for that question. And like my worldview is also like shared with Satta. We first of all we are both Liberians. We have worked from since being children in different groups and SGBB group together. I think the most inspiring aspect is, well, growing up as a young person, we define ourselves to be able to stand up for against increasing sexual and gender-based violence, to be able to combat uh, increasing waves, not just sexual violence, but to create solutions to work with other young people that are all across the world and to be able to find common solutions. And I think it is very, 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 very incredible what we have done, especially with Satta mentioned the affiliation of child right advocate. And that group is serves as a boundary. We heard the largest national protest ever in Liberia, and that protest led to currently we have the president just provided DNA machine for the first time ever in Liberia to be able to checkmate uh, cases of sexual and gender-based violence. And beyond just that, the challenges are also very, very much not immune to the challenges we have in sub-Saharan countries or maybe like across the world. But I think with what we are leading, especially men being involved in those kind of conversation, being involved in actions, being able to plan and organize protests with women, like Sada Sharif and other women in Liberia, we are making a groundbreaking change in the cases of sexual and gender-based violence. In my reality, I think my accomplishment have just been being able to be passionate about specific cause that seeing myself being able to work with other young people around the world because I believe global sustainability can only be achieved when we work together as young people. And those are some of the core principles that I've had, and those are some of the work that those values and views that inspire me to be able to lead and be able to create change. But overall, I think this is really an impressive aspect of this conversation. Just want to thank you for asking that.
Thank you so much, Wanto. Noah, if you're online, can you tell us how we're doing with time? Because we really want people to start engaging in this conversation.
Unmuted. I think we're doing fine. I think we have about like 45 minutes in this session.
Okay.
And I think we've gone through like 15 minutes so far.
Okay. Thank you so much. Over to you, Fred. ManUp campaign has done so much in really raising awareness on so many factors: LGBTQ, gender pay gap, and a couple of other buzzwords, feminism. It's been a gender war. Who is to do what? Should men be in charge? Should women be in charge? And I feel there's the call for collaboration. What are your takes on this word, especially calling on government, United Nations, specific authorities on major legislation? What were the programs you took on? Especially, I could remember during the CSW, there was you went with Queen Mother to talk around getting more men, even in the conversation of making sure they can come from different countries, get visas to attend the CSW. What have been your progress so far on all of this legislation? Can you share some of these experiences with us?
Yeah, I think that there's some really important, work that we're doing right now. One of the things that we did when we started to do the social media was we gathered up, quite a bit of people. Sometimes we're not as strong as before, but now we're working a lot with Cities for CEDAW, and then that developed into, right now there's a very, the Me Too movement started to be, kind of fostered online, and that really started to change by holding men in power accountable. But there's a dangerous element to that because it doesn't necessarily reach down to, the poorest worker. In the people can kind of still work with impunity. So lately we've been able to work with ILO on C-190. It's a convention to stop sexual harassment and gender-based violence in the workplace. So three countries have actually ratified that already. So it's going to be official, law of the world. But we do have to gather momentum so that everybody can have a safe workplace. And during this COVID crisis, we really put a strong emphasis on that the workplace is now combining with homes. And so often, people work virtually and there's, different kinds of online abuse. We did a recent seminar to put together a declaration to prevent exploitation of children through online. There's a lot of trafficking and images of children. So we're working on a convention there. I think there's also, the finance for developing, for development. And, this is the first time that we've been able to weigh in substantively on, policies for finance for development. And we really think that including social protection floors of income in developing nations is really important. So we've tried to get and recommend SDRs being released so countries have the ability to fund, taking care of people during this time and also getting people vaccinated. So there's a lot that's going on right now. And we need both working at the UN on policy, but it's so important that these conventions and laws apply in countries. So we need to have, youth to move these conventions into local laws and treaties. And then we need, most of all, social norms change. Youth understanding, that they can shape and create cultures of peace. So I think, we need both the policy aspect and then we need the activism where we are spreading the understanding of gender, both in stories and how we shape our personal lifelong journey as champions of inclusion, equality, and opportunity. So those are some of our frameworks. And then looking at these very critical SDGs from the youth and gender lens is really important because if we want to achieve any of the SDGs, we have to include and actually activate and fund youth groups to be able to carry out the mission. So often, studies are done by youth, projects are put together, but so often they sit unfunded. So we're trying to, when we put together teams, I'm really trying to emphasize getting somebody from media and from government involved in the team so projects could actually, be some of the red tape and some of the projects scaled. So we're really trying to try and really think of ways to activate and scale. So I've been putting together what I call a smart grid and trying to map every partner in what areas of DSmart, sports, music, art, reflection, technology, they have activism, and what areas do they work in? Education, legislation, economic development, and trying to find out how we can collaborate together, what areas and regions you work in, what types of programs, and how we could start to focus some of the attention of some of these larger institutions to start to be able to fund and scale. Because I know, most of us do this work out of love. We do a lot of volunteer, or most of it is just purely, we all subsidize this work. But it really, the changes that need to happen, it needs funding. And we really actually save government's funding by taking care of the people, by creating gender equality, inclusion, and opportunity. They are saving money by reducing gender-based violence. So they need to invest because they actually, the governments and private industries gain workforce, everybody prospers. So, there's a broad range of things that we need to do, from activism to legislation to education to development. All of these things are interlocked and important in developing a successful world. Okay, you're on mute. You're muted.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. We're moving on in this session. It's still engaging men and boys for gender equality, and I'm sure we have excellent people in the house who want to jump on this topic. Already in the chat group, I already see from Jacinta Musiliu is saying molding our boys from young age will prepare their minds and brains for future. You know, we should change our ways of thinking. What is the room for if a woman is the president, should the man be called the first gentleman or the second gentleman like we have currently in the United States with Vice President Kamala Harris? What are the convention? And I'd like to quickly ask that you quickly start preparing your questions or join in the conversation. If you have any contributions you want to make around gender pay, feminism, let's have it. So we still have Ms. Shatta Sharif from Liberian. So I would like to throw this, you know, the idea of a female president of the United States has been explored by various writers in novels, including science fiction, movies, and television. Even in Liberia, President Sullivan was awarded the prestigious Nobel Prize for Peace in 2011 and Liberia's first female president. Tanzania is just having their own first female president and has been welcomed with a lot of red flags. So Sharif, if you've been following this, what's your take on female presidency and how should men be involved?
I think a lot of time we attach, women are the ones that will check, oh, is she qualified? Is she even going to do the job? Because she's a woman, we gotta check her family and everything. When it's about women in leadership, we always have something to say about their qualification, about who they are and what they represent. And I feel the way society treat women in politics, that's not the same way to treat men. Because, for example, you mentioned President Sullivan, right? In the scene 2005, when President Sullivan ran for president of Liberia, there were so many things people were discussing on the radio about President Sullivan. Or she needed to be married to a man. She needed her family to support her because family is an important part of her presidency. And they were like checking her qualification and everything. And I just feel that if we as a universe, not just as Liberia, are to fight against gender inequality, it also starts with the people that we have in leadership. From the presidency in Tanzania, you're not the only one. I have a lot of Tanzanian friends and people who one way or the other have been like, the president just became president, the female president. It's because of circumstances and stuff. She's, her role was a VP, and now I think it's going to be hard for her. And I'm like, what make you think that the previous president they had was good enough, and now the vice president who's taking over as the president is not good? And then the president said, because not just enough justification to tell you that she's not qualified to be the president. And I feel it's very wrong. And we need to start having these conversations and start discouraging justifications that tend to limit women's role when it comes to participating in politics and leadership. It's completely wrong. And I'm here rooting for all the women that break barriers every day, that are in political parties, and making sure that women are represented and seen at the table. So I'm just so excited about Tanzania, about the US and Liberia role in electing the first female president of Africa.
Thank you so much. We're still here, and I still see a topic is still saying that we can join in this conversation. It's an interactive one. We're having a dialogue. We still have our speakers, Fred Sullivan, Wantoe, and Satta Sharif. So Wantoe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chase.
Yeah, at the UN Civil Society conference at Salt Lake City, you were talking about period with boys, and it fascinated a lot of audience. Like, it took them a resounding applause for your works in that line. You know, every time people talk about if men were on their periods, maybe parts will be dropping off the skies. Why is it a tax fee for Viagra, but there's a tax on tampons, and a couple of conversations? Why are men not jumping into that conversation? And you spoke about it, talking about period with boys. What's your take about men in menstruation?
Yes, that's a very great question. And at the Civil Society conference in Salt Lake, that was just my highlight. And I really found it incredible of how we were able to organize such a session that sort of gather men perspective on one of the increasing challenge of challenges that affect women in Africa, and like specifically Sub-Saharan Africa. I think just as when we talk about men involving in conversation and actions and also solutions for gender-based violence, that's how it is also a powerful tool to be able to transform period poverty when men are involved in it, not just a conversation but also finding solution. And I'm very comfortable having conversation about period poverty with any female because I think when you have a conversation, one thing that sort of resonate is the fact that you become aware of the impact of pure poverty, and a lot of people say, "Oh, this is because of the gender, how you can call it stigma, and how do you call it? Basically, when you talk about pure poverty and also look at the impact of gender stigma that also affects the conversation in itself, shows how very difficult it is to be able to have that sort of important aspect of stars. And at the civil society conference, we just didn't even have this conversation, but we have women coming up because men were involved in the conversation. I think you saw there were several other women who came up giving powerful storyline about their first day of having period of menstruation, how they handle it. And we also had other women who spoke about the challenges of girls getting access to sanitary pad and also getting access to really essential tools that could help them to go through their challenges. And the fact that we men were in a conversation, we men were sparring out the dialogue. It just created a healthy space, safe space for them. And that's just one aspect I want to be able to pinpoint is that when we have conversation about pure poverty, we create a safe space that invite women to be able to be active, be actively aware of what the impact that pure poverty has on them. And two, we spiral out state legislative actions because they feel that this is not only about women alone, this is about men, this is about creating a space that we can be able to actively engage in this conversation. And state legislation become a very essential aspect of being able to combat pure poverty. And I just want to be able to close on this with gender equality, like Satta said. I think what we can be able to be able to see in these two parallel aspect of engagement is that when society have inclusive engagements on social issues, it is very much it becomes not just a specific gender barrel conversation. It becomes a conversation that includes everyone to be part of it. That means solutions is more faster, solution is more active, and also solution becomes very more of a societal issue than just an individual thinking about, oh, this is about women issue. And one thing that we do is that we change the gender stereotypes, we change misogynistic perspective, we change the patriarchal barrier that sort of involve people who think that, oh no, women should be stereotyped, women should always be violated, women shouldn't have access to these things. And I think that was very impactful for us when we had this conversation in Salt Lake City with the civil society unit.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can see a lot of people raising their hands. If you've raised your hand before, please can you raise your hand so we can have you join on this conversation? I saw some hands up. I can find them. If you're that person right now, please can you unmute yourself?
Sarai had a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm of the opinion that boy children should be raised from birth as equals, taught to be equal. And I strongly think mothers play a role, because if we treat kids as equal in the house, in everything, roles, everything that happens, they learn to respect women, because they learn to understand all the activities and functions that women do are not as easy as they think. For example, if boy child doesn't get involved in fetching water, they don't know how difficult it is, and they don't understand and value water, such that every time they get home, water is there. Even when they grow up, you find they can even be responsible for a town, a city, a country. They won't value the need of clean water as they are in positions of management. So I think if we instill, when they are still kids, to treat women with respect, and they grow up looking at it as normal than trying to change them when they are older. A child who grows up thinking that beating a woman is okay, trying to change them when they are older, they change for a moment, but when they're in a circumstance where they realize they don't have a solution, they revert back to abusive situations. So I think we should target more at younger boys, so that as they grow up, they appreciate equality. They don't see it as something which women are begging for, and they shouldn't get. That's my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aria, for sharing that. If we have the men in the house, do they agree that we should have a paternity leave? Is there anyone who wants to talk on that?
I don't know what the men doing, but it's not just an agreement thing. This is a fact. It should be something that we shouldn't be asking. You agree? So women can take maternity leave. So men, you agree? I mean, it's so sad that we even having this conversation in the 21st century. Honestly, men, you gotta man up and do the right thing. Every time you're a woman, I mean, you gotta do the right thing, like I said. So and like one of the speakers just said, when we start training boys from the young age to view gender equality as not just something that women are begging for, then we are making huge impact, because these boys will grow up knowing that when we talk about women's rights, or when we talk about men taking paternity leave, the women are not begging them to take it because that's their role and responsibility as a father. They need to grow up and live in a society where they appreciate everything that women do, and that it's about equal participation. They should take paternity leave. We shouldn't be begging them to do it.
Thank you so much. For the women in the house, another debate. Should we take period leave? It's been a long conversation in the offices, in the rooms, like, should all of these leaves be approved? Paternity leave, period leave, you know, issues of concern. So if you're just joining us, we're still having the dialogue on engaging men and boys and gender equality, raising teenage boys and girls to understand what gender equality plays. We are all equal, and how do we make that fit into the system, making sure legislations are put in place, making sure government, the private sectors, individuals all rise up to the occasion, and we make a clarion call to enhance the image of what is feminism. What do we really understand by feminism? Is it a war? When I say I'm a proud feminist. Is this something that people should be hanging about? These are conversations begging for answers. So if you're on this call right now and you have something greatly you would like to share with the audience, please go ahead, unmute yourself, introduce yourself, let us know where you're joining us from.
Chase, I think you have someone hand up.
Okay.
They spoke already. Terara Mafuti.
Yes, you've spoken. I think her hand's still up.
All right. So before someone come out, also let me share that. I
Okay.
think. Oh, someone want to speak, right?
I wanted to answer on the period leave. As
Okay.
a woman, I'm talking from Harare, Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And as a woman, I wouldn't want people to know I'm having my period. So I wouldn't want to leave. I think it's something I would treat personal. But if someone is not feeling well, there are some who are sick every time when they have a period. Those might deserve a break. But if someone is not, I think it's something which, as a woman, I want to keep personal to myself. Paternity leave, yes, I think the husband should join, or the father of the kid should join in the early days of a baby, because there's a lot involved and a woman needs a break for in taking care of the baby. So they should be involved and they should understand what it is to have a kid in the house, so that when you are deciding on the numbers of kids in the house, they understand what work is involved. As an African, sometimes men or fathers in the house, husbands, they decide on a number which is sometimes unreasonable because they are not involved in anything but producing. So I think they should get a paternity leave. Thank you.
There's evidence that involve fatherhood with an active role in caregiving, that it can actually improve men's own physical and mental health, and that we should engage men in paid care work opportunities. Wantoe, you're on the floor, but what's your take on fatherhood?
I wanted to say, this is really an interesting conversation, like you said. And I think sometimes like it varies from one continental perspective to another. And as an African, you understand that it's different in how people be able to conceive paternity as compared to in European country. And as a male, I think I believe in mutual gender role being shared, and I think men and women can be able to be active, you know, actively involved in gender role. That is, it is very important for male themselves to also be able to take on some chores. It is also important for male to be able to be able to provide mentorship and support for their children, and as well as being able to be a support base for their women. And but the reason why I'm saying is interesting because this has been one of the main components for increasing gender-based violence, especially in Africa, because male have the perspective that women should be used as a tools, should be used as just doing chores, doing work, no feature, just being able to be caretaker, being submissive, especially that's the key term, being able to be able to take hold on them just in that sort of way. And I think what you have said here, it just can be, we all can be able to ask whether masculinity could be used as a means of just sharing roles and function, or rather than being used as a dominant tools to propagate women to be a submissive binary gender. And once we can be able to see that and mutually agree with that, I think society will be really better to have equal opportunity in respect of gender. And yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, I think that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we're almost rounding up. If we have feedback from our participants to talk on this topic, thank you so much, Terrier, for joining in this conversation. Noah, how are we doing with time?
Sorry about that. We have until 10:15, so 12 minutes left.
Okay, we have 12 minutes to go. Fred, this conversation has taken ETEL conversation from paternity to period leave to getting women in government role, but we're talking equality. Are there areas that should be covered about men so it doesn't become a war conversation? What
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
saying about the role of men? Like Shatta used the word, how do we man up to all of this conversation? Gender pay gap. What's your take on that? It's been so major. We had a statistics that we shared in the group, 79 cents in some area in Pennsylvania. I'm trying to get the image, but share your take on that, please.
Yeah. You know, I, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and you know, we started ManUp when she was 1 year old or so. Um, my wife has a corporate job at MetLife as a uh, systems analyst. I stepped back. I'm an entrepreneur, and really became the primary caretaker of my daughter. If people in the community saw my daughter or me, my daughter would be usually with me. Um, I ran my company, but I would often bring my daughter in a sling into meeting rooms in New York, uh, the Vertical Club, and different different places. So, um, and I would carry, you know, her bottles and different things like that. And I think that that starts to um, make people aware that that childcare is important and that men can do it. And that was quite a while ago. You know, in New York, it's much more common for, you know, men to take the lead in care, but it gives an opportunity. Um, One of the big factors in gender pay gap is the long maternity leave, and men not also taking maternity leave to create those bonds with their children from being very young. uh, they feel like they're babysitting their children. You shouldn't be babysitting your own children. You you're you're a caretaker, and if we get men more that become caretakers of children, not only children but some of the older folks in their families, that allows women to really lean in to different careers and not lose, you know, big portions of their careers. I think, you know, as I come back and my daughter more matured, I was able to, you know, resume my entrepreneurship, and kept company quite quickly, which wouldn't have happened necessarily in the vice versa as easily. So men really need to step up, and during the critical early years, really, you know, try and shoulder some of that responsibility. And it is important, if there is the privilege of maternity leave, that fathers take advantage of that also, um, as much or more than females, so that their careers are not set back, so that they feel, you know, true responsibility. So there's a lot of struggle when you do that. There's, you know, it's you're changing roles. You have to figure out new ways to relate to each other. But this is the process of developing healthy masculinities and femininities that include and allow us, you know, to bring out as men our compassionate side, to um, start to understand and have insight into, you know, how much unpaid work uh, women take on. I think, you know, I think there's so many, you know, rigid stereotypes about this. And we really need to intermingle these, and we really need to renegotiate our relationships. So creating healthy masculinities and femininities is critical to creating healthy societies. And this is an ongoing conversation that we know needs so much work. And I think during COVID, we put on an international summit on domestic and household violence. Everybody needs a safe place to live. And that is critical. And it's really critical at this time to do this. And mental health is very important. There should be no stigma about seeking mental health. Both men and women need support during this time, and we can support each other to refresh. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Farad. Satta, what's your take on the E for she? And what roles, what should our participant be doing way forward in breaking into this conversation, making it more practical? What are steps that you would recommend?
I think first we gotta continue to create awareness. Education is the first step. We have to start discouraging conversations that justify violence against women and encourage gender roles that limit women participation. We got to bring more men at the table and make them feel a part of this process, because it's not just a woman thing or women are fighting for their equality. Is about the general good of society as a whole. So it, young boys getting involved, even older men. So I know a lot of he for she's in Liberia do conversations around local community outreach where they invite other men to come and be part of the conversation. So it's about men talking to men, and if possible, women can also get involved. But I really look forward to seeing a lot of men that believe in equality, that believe in women's participation to reach out to their fellow men as well. And I also believe in parity and for affirmative action for women as well. And I don't support men taking period leave.
Thank you so much. It's about 2 minutes to go. Wantoe, can you share your last bits and a take-home message for all our participants? Thank you. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. I want to be incredibly grateful to the UN Civil Society Unit for providing us this platform. And Chase, also, thank you so much for really exceptionally moderating this conversation. And also to the co discussant, and Noah also in the back who's there doing the reporting. As a male, I feel proud of my role being in the fight of gender equality. I feel really exceptionally grateful that I've been supported by female, especially Sada Sheriff here, and the work we lead and what we do in Liberia. I feel very proud and passionate about what we are leading. And I think once we continue to engage more male in the conversation, more men see gender-based violence as not just inclusively immune to women, but overall very impactful. If we get involved, I think our work will be very sustainable. And henceforth, let's stand for he for she campaign, and let's try to build a work actively to build a create a better world that is safe and transparent, equitable for women. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And in this celebration of the International Women's Month, and for closing in on the dialogue for men and boys, we're saying the modes of engagement or types of activities may include individual counseling. Let there not be a separate room. I was in New York, and I noticed there was a universal bathroom that involves male and women. And they encourage the fact that when they have section in schools where boys and girls are taught on sexual reproductive health, these are conversations that concerns them at teenage years. You know, there are lots of myths, a lot of misconception. These are times for men and women to work together. There should be group work with men and women, men as allies to women, men as brothers, men as fathers of girls or allies to girls issues, strong research on those topics, Do not spread information that you are not aware or knowledgeable about gender equality. If you're not strong on the term feminism, do not use those words. Political and policy engagement. If you have anyone in legislation, let them be aware of this information, be it paternity, be it period leave, be it menstrual equity bill, be it tampon tax free, networking sessions, irrespective of your culture. Learn to know what are the words that are appealing, even with people living with disability, the LGBTQ communities. Media work, try to use images that pass on messages that would improve gender equality. And if you're in that space, join the rest of the audience. Be a strong advocate. I thank you so much, guys, for joining us in engaging men and boys on gender equality. Thank you for the civil society unit for doing this. And we'll see you next year for this dialogue. Remember, it's a series. We'll keep you posted. Stay tuned on our social media. It's been Chaste, the Padman, and I'm signing out. Thank you.
Just a reminder, everybody, if we're going to be meeting back in the main room of this Zoom chat to do a recap. You can hear about some of what was discussed in the other breakout rooms, and then we'll have some closing remarks too. So we'd love you to join us for that as well.
Kindly join us for the session, and it's been an interesting time. And cheers to all of our 30 participants who joined us in this dialogue. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thank you so much to all our speakers, participants, and keep the conversation going. Follow the hashtag on Twitter, on Facebook, post and share to your friends what we've learned here today. And let's do more. Let's stop talking and now acting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you can all leave the room to go in the main room. Just you look downward, you see leave room.
Okay.